Good morning. It's Wednesday, February 15th. I want to welcome you to your Los Angeles City Council meeting. We meet on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Friday at 10 a.m. My name is Herb Wesson, and I am the president of the Los Angeles City Council. This meeting, again, is now in session. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alarcon, Buscaino, Cardenas, Englander, Garcetti, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Zine, Wesson. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Parks moves, Mr. Labange seconds. Next,
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Englander moves, Mr. Koretz seconds.
Mr. President, would you like to run through the agenda?
Oh, you just beat me to the punch. I was going to suggest that to you, Mr. Clerk.
My apologies, sir.
Let's go with the first set of agenda items.
Very good. Items 1 through 7 are items noticed for public hearing. We do have a card on item 7, sir.
Members, specials? Seeing and hearing none. Let's open and close the public hearing on the remaining items. With that, we'll move to a vote. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Mr. Clerk, next.
Very good, sir. Before moving on, those were ordinances, or are ordinances, rather, so unless they're reconsidered at a later time in the meeting, they will go over for 1 week.
Well, if you can notify me when we have 12 members, then we'll reconsider those items. But at this juncture, let's move forward, starting, I believe, with item 8.
Very good, sir. Items 8 through 32 are items for which public hearings have been held. A committee report for item 8 has been submitted and has been circulated for council's consideration.
Members, specials? Mr. Garcetti.
23, please.
Could you repeat that?
21 through 23, if we can call those together and call them special.
Mr. Clerk, 21 through 23 held for Mr. Garcetti.
Very good, sir.
Mr. Labange.
24, please.
Labange, 24.
And 30.
And 30.
And 29. And 32. You got a lot to say. Very quickly.
Mr. Labange.
32. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to make sure I got. Mr. Clerk, did you get that? He rattled off so many. I don't know if I got all of them.
He is difficult to keep up with, sir. At last count, that was called special for Councilmember Labange. Items 24, 29, 30, and 32.
Are you okay now, Mr. Labange? All righty then. Seeing and hearing no other requests, why don't we open the roll and close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
We've just been joined by our colleague, Richard Alarcon. Mr. Clerk, that brings us to items, 33 through 42?
Correct, sir. Items 33 through 42 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, without objection. Do we have any cards on these items?
Sir, we do. We have cards on items 33, 39, and 39. 33 and 39, sir.
Specials, members? Seeing and hearing none, then why don't we open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote?
13 ayes.
Mr. Clerk.
Sir, items 43 and 44 are scheduled for closed session. Would you like to hold them on the desk?
I'd like to get some guidance from the Chair of Budget and Finance, Mr. Krikorian. What is your fancy where it relates to items 43, 44? Would you like us to hold those items on the desk?
Can you please hold those on the desk for the moment, Mr.
Yes.
President?
Okay.
Pardon me, sir. Item 43 is a matter that has come from the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, not Budget and Finance. 44 is from Budget and Finance. We can certainly hold that on the desk.
Why don't we just hold both of them for right now?
Very good, sir. Mr. President, that takes council back, we do have 13 members at this time if you'd like to reconsider items 1 through 6.
Okay, so let's open the roll on reconsideration. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Now, if we could actually vote on those items, let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Mr. Clerk, does that bring us by chance to public comment?
Yes, sir, it does.
But before that, I'd like to call on Mr. Cardenas for an introduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We have a special guest with us today, a friend of mine, Cortland Warren. He's all the way here from Texas. He's a public speaker, and he's part of an organization called PSI Basics, and he agreed to allow me to bring him to work today with me so he can see the best council in the country at work. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Okay, we'll begin our public comment process. I'll call 3 individuals. Mr. Herman, Mr. Ankur Patel, I think from the Valley, and Mr. Arnold Sachs, who was almost a councilman for the day. So if I could get Mr. Herman and Mr. Patel, we know you're in the Valley. We'll get right with you, sir. And Mr. Sachs. Yeah, Mr. Herman, it's you.
Greetings, council members and citizens of Los Angeles. We are all appalled by the actions of LAUSD, are we not? Council members, public officials, those, may I have a little respect and quiet, please? These heinous crimes towards children is unacceptable, and we should look at it in our actions as public officials to take the time and the energy to bring this to more attention of such misconduct. To young children that are vulnerable, when it's our responsibility as adults, as community representatives, to protect these vulnerable children by adults. If I understand correctly, Monica Garcia of LAUSD comes quite frequently into our community as she and our councilman, who was an ex-president of the school board, has nothing to say. So, is the school system failed to take the issues seriously? Yes. For the first time in my life, no matter what, I can't believe this is occurring in this time, in this era, when the Catholic religion has done the same. This misconduct issue should be something that all of you should be involved in. All of us should take responsibility. This is a city matter. This is a state matter. And this is a federal matter. So hopefully with ears listening and representation better by my councilman, Jose Huizar, I ask that you assist us in these matters. Such abuse, their power, and the broken of these laws is apprehensible.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. And so now we should go to the Valley. Mr. Patel, good to see you, sir.
I guess it's good to see you too. Is this meeting even worth my time, right? These 2 minutes that I get, I can comment on this item or that item. I look through the agenda every time I come. And if I have a question, I can pose it during my time, but you guys generally don't answer them. You guys say, look at the council file. You can look up the details there. There should be a public access computer here that had that information on it. You don't think so? Public coming to these meetings should have access to the information that's on the internet about these items that you are then going to be voting for. Instead, you refer me to the council file, which I don't have a BlackBerry that I can look up. Even if I did, your internet service and all that stuff is just garbage. It doesn't even work on most mobile phones. So I go to a lot of meetings, not just these. I go to redistricting meetings. I was down at Pierce College for the redistricting meeting. I LADWP, this and that, and I go to a lot of meetings with students on campus. Right, I'm at Northridge right now doing a graduate program. Pierce College, Valley, Mission, other schools around Los Angeles area, and I'm almost tired of going to a bunch of meetings where we got students, or generally neighborhood councils. I go to a lot of neighborhood council meetings also, where we got people who don't really know what's going on, right? We're not educated, we're not informed on the details, the specifics, maybe because we don't have access to a public computer right here. Not really, but meetings with a bunch of people that really don't know what's going on, that don't have resources, and are decision makers. Now, I'm tired of going to a lot of these meetings, so please check me out at Civic Circus. I'm doing this radio piece, going to 3-hour meetings so you don't have to. It's on KPFK. You can Google it, Civic Circus, right? CIRCUS, Dog and Pony Show. We all know this. Civic Circus Patel. My last name is Patel. You can Google it. I've done about 30 pieces. A lot of different stuff in there. Check it out, please.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. A couple things. This was in the this was in the New York Times. This is for real people. The New York Times National, Sunday, February 12th. Struggling cities turn to a crop for cash. Taxes on medical marijuana help shore up some shrinking budgets. Oakland, that's a city in California, by the way, has collected $1.4 million in taxes from 4 cooperatives selling marijuana. They want to double the number of cooperatives to 8. Now, I understand the city is a deficit. As a matter of fact, it was in the newspaper, like $75 million. Wonderful job. And they even included the $2 million or so that it will cost for the Occupy movement for all the overtime and everything. But you know what they did include as part of that deficit? The $30 million that you authorized with pay raises for the labor union, for the unions that work in the city when you had the layoffs 2 years ago. So that's $30 million 2 years ago, and $30 million again, and $30 million. That's like $90 million. And what's the deficit of $75 million? So if you do the quick math, actually without that authorization, when you negotiated to failure, because it was only based on layoffs, you could have had like an early retirement program, and instead of capping it, increased it by 400 people, there would have been no layoffs, there would be no deficit. But the smart thinkers that you all are, boom, we have a $75 million deficit. That being said, I'm sorry I missed the discussion regarding the trash contract. You know, the LA Times quotes this guy, what's his name? Greg Good, for the Los Angeles Alliance for the New Economy. The Daily Breeze quotes Marilyn Janis, Executive Director of the labor-affiliated Los Angeles Alliance. And wasn't she on the CRA board? Just wondering, is that another duplicate?
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Now we're going to go to the Valley to hear from Mr. Rick Nightingale. Good to see you, Mr. Nightingale. And then here in City Hall, we'll have Olga Hall and Michael Carrion. Mr. Nightingale, morning.
Good morning, Rick Nightingale. This is regarding the school board. You know, they keep saying that they're broke, but, you know, every dollar that goes to Sacramento, they get 40%. They voted on this a while back, and they thought it was the greatest thing since cornflakes. But nobody can turn around and put money away for a rainy day when it comes to the government and everything. It's just impossible to do it. You just won't. You just don't believe that they will. But when I went to school, you were taught the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now they turn around and we have the problem with the Hispanics regarding they can't speak English and so forth. But now we go to the community colleges when they don't learn at the schools that they want to close the community colleges. Well, I think if you learn computerized stuff, you're going to make it in the world. But go back to the 3 R's. I was an industrial arts major. I learned how to do drafting and so forth. When you know this kind of stuff, you can get into construction and so forth, that you can read prints and work your way up like I did, and I own my own business, I became a foreman as an electrician and so forth, and I made a very good living. But no, they turn around and say, well, we don't need you to learn any of that. There's no shops in the schools for these people to learn to use their hands. And then they say, well, you can go to community colleges. Now they want to close them. They are overpacked at the community colleges and their automotive departments and so forth, but no, they want to close them. I just don't understand it, where they think that everybody's going to learn. They squander the money, they let things go by. Just this thing about all these teachers molesting. They don't pay attention to what's going on. And what's it going to come to? But you've got to keep the community colleges open for the people that turn around and are out of high school and can't afford to do anything else except go to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nightingale. And I guess you and I went to school at a time when we had auto shop in high school, and we had medals and all kinds of things. And I agree with we need to do more to find our kids other alternative career paths. With that said, Ms. Hall and Michael, if you guys could come forward. Ms. Hall, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the council. 7 months ago, at the end of June, this council gave the Southwest Museum to the Autry on a silver platter, with the exception of Councilman Reyes and Wizard. Afterwards, to cover it up, your unethical deed, you loudly expressed that you were committed to form a group to work with my community to save the Southwest Museum. So far, nothing has been done. You've been dragging your feet and ignored the issue. Why? Because, as usual, you promise. Your word is meaningless because you give it for theatrics, not because you intend to keep it. In the early 90s, Councilman Hernandez took bold steps along with our community to stop the removal of the Southwest Museum collection from its place of origin in Mount Washington. He was a leader that loved his community and wanted to protect and preserve the legacy of Charles Loomis. He knew the value of the Southwest Museum. He did what needed to be done to safeguard it. Sadly, we do not see that kind of leadership, commitment, and love for the Southwest Museum from Councilman Wizard. He talks, but does he really care? Where is his commitment? 7 months have passed and nothing has happened. If he was a true leader and cared about our legacy and loved our community, he would have the courage to stand up and loudly and widely expose the thievery of the Autry. Councilman Reyes did. Why doesn't he? You all want respect from the people, and you do not respect the people that you swore to serve on their oath.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Michael, good to see you.
Good to see you. Wow. Lady took the words right out of my mouth. Mr. Weezer is a liar. He lied to her. He stood in front of this council and implied that I upset his staff. Ladies and gentlemen, this is life-threatening situations we're talking about. And when Mr. Weezer's staff doesn't do anything about it, yes, I'm going to come and speak on it. Lady in front of me, gentleman over here, just said the same thing. I think it's time for Mr. Weezer to leave office and leave us alone. Maybe we'll be better off alone. Number two, I'm here to talk about drugs, which affected me personally. I've got 15 years of sobriety. And when you guys sit here and talk about doing something about drugs and doing something about this, it's a joke. If you want to do something, Let's go after the quack doctors who make all these phony prescription cards. Then you'll affect them. You guys have done nothing about the doctors who are making all these phony prescriptions. This has been going on since Liz Taylor. Doctors giving you script after script after script because they're getting paid for it. You want a phony medical card to smoke marijuana? Come on in, $50. I don't care what you got. Here, $50, $50. They're making money off of it. And every council member here, wow, I don't even have eye contact from any of them except the president. Now, people are dying today. Whitney Houston just died. I'll keep my personal opinions about that to myself. But I think if you guys get off these comfortable chairs and put these pins to work, pass some kind of a law where you go after the doctors who are writing all this crap. Thank you.
Michael, thank you. And I also want to thank you for the service that you've given to so many people here in Los Angeles. You and I have discussed it. I know you have a bunch of people that anytime, 24 hours a day, you could receive a call, and you always answer it to try to keep those sober. So I salute you, sir. Every one of us have experienced something like that where it relates to our family. So even though I may not agree with you all the time when you come here, I have utmost respect for the work that you do. Now, our last two speakers on public comment, Zuma Dog and Matt Dowd, please come forward.
Yes, good morning, City Council and constituents watching on TV. Zuma Dog, I'd like to quickly recap what I was here yesterday to say. Some of you weren't here, and I was cut off in violation of First Amendment. I won a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles at Venice Beach for 4 years of violation. I am now disabled, diagnosed so by the state of California. I'm not able to work anymore and have real problems, baby, many of you know about. I wanted to settle the case, and I thought we would because I'm not asking for that much money. But, you know, what happens is Carmen Tutanich just put this law firm outside council. It's called Myers-Nave. And what I understand is there might be a little quid pro quo going on here, because what I heard is Myers-Nave contributes to Carmen Tutanich's DA campaign, and then he has cronies contribute to Carmen Tutanich's DA campaign, and then Carmen Tutanich hires Myers-Nave to drag out the disability settlement of the disabled guy, which is asking for a fraction, so then you rack up the charges to millions and millions, and who cares, because all Carmen cares about is that smallest number that he puts down on payable damages, and it doesn't matter if you spend millions to keep that figure down. So while I'm here, let's talk about the biggest news in the city. Extra, read all about it at LACityNews.com. October 2011, the city of Los Angeles lost a ruling in Superior Court. LA Housing Department has been citing building and safety code, assessing fines and penalties, and seizing property. It is illegal to do such. I have filed a report with the Federal Bureau of Investigations because people are losing homes. You are fining them. It is in violation of the law. So please make sure that as of today on the record, the Housing Department never again cites building code. That's for the Building and Safety Department, you criminal entity.
Thank you, Mr. Zuma Dog. Mr. Matt Dowd. Matt Dowd.
All right. Thank you. Yes. Glad everyone's listening today after yesterday's debacle. But I got carried out of here when I was just sitting there doing nothing. And Dion already ruled that you can use a profanity at the end of your public comment, because he ruled that it's more of a disruption to say something than to just let the speaker walk away. So there's another double standard. They're happening all the time. And it's called as applied, even if you're going to win you think the rules are facial. So, like I said, Jan Perry, she's the only one who stood up and put Tom LaBonge in his place, and he seems to forget that. And I'm talking about in his place under the flag, not, So we got Myers Nave, we're calling them now. Big old U.S. bank attorney firm, and what they're doing, they're using city money, Bill Rosendahl, out of the general fund now. Library money, things that could be used, but they're just trying to put it into this law firm and then put campaign contributions back into his DA run. So that's a conflict of interest. And here's the thing here, we've got documented evidence. There's a federal standard for lost income. We've got clearly documented lost income. We've got citations and violations from the police, getting dragged to jail, all kind of things, going to court. It's all recorded, and it's provable. And we got the injunction. So is this all money down the tube now, and we're going to be here every day because we got nothing better to do. We're finished with what we did. All the bad, how many bad police videos are out there hassling me as a performer, and that just looks bad? It's damages.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. That concludes our public comment section of today's council. Mr. Clerk, why don't we move forward with item 33? I believe it's a commission appointment, and I think it's been held by a card. By a few cards. So why don't we have you read it? Oh, this is my neighbor. Okay, let's bring her up.
Mr. President, this is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Charmaine Jefferson to the Cultural Affairs Commission.
Wes and I. Oh, no, I guess I should allow you to say something about you. In fact, why don't I get the public speakers out of the way? So if I could get Mr. Sachs, Mr. Dowd, and Mr. Dog, please come forward. Mr. Arnold Sachs, Mr. Matt Dowd, and Zuma Dog.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to weigh in on this. First of all, I'd like to remind City Council that when Antonio Villaraigosa puts a commissioner before you, it many times results in FBI investigations. So I immediately am circumspect of any of his commissioners. You know that the FBI is investigating multiple departments as wide and high as possible. And also we're talking about cultural affairs. Now, keep in mind, I am a creative, artistic person, and the people are not going to like what I have to say in this regard. But this department, I hope the first thing the commissioner does is cut the department and end it entirely. We have police, fire, roads, trash, all types of problems in the city, and this is the biggest fraud factory commission in the entire city. Here's what happens. Pension money. The city lost 20% of the pension fund, billions and billions of dollars. That's why we're having all kinds of cuts in services right now, and I'm being distracted by the council member, Dennis Zine. So here's what happens. The commissioners of the pension firms, they filter the money into these bogus cultural commission projects. Let's talk about Montezuma, what's-his-face, and all these people that Antonio and believe me, it's an organized racket. So I'm trying to talk off the cuff here, but I want the people to know everything's wrapped up in a warm and fuzzy all the time, but the biggest fraud, waste, abuse racket is this Cultural Affairs Commission when we're having cuts in all departments because it's a shill of which the pension money is funneled into like these theater projects. Oh, like Jose Huizar, we need to inspire young future tellers, and we're going to give you $150,000 of this theater company to put your logo on a website, and then you don't even put it on the website, and you don't get anything for the money. I'd like to know how many of these productions that these Cultural Affairs departments are actually putting on here. I think it's the biggest scam in the whole city.
Thank you, Mr. Matt Dowd, Mr. Arnold Sachs. Arnold, are you on this? No? Oh. Okay, Mr. Dowd.
Wow, how did I get Zuma Dog back? Gee. So anyway, this is a very delicate thing. The Cultural Commission in a city like Los Angeles. Clearly there's the boardwalk culture that was decimated. you know, and there's all these people, and this can fall under Cultural Commission, because there's all these people get up and they say, oh, the boardwalk vendors, this and that, and they're non-compliant, and they're making a lawless environment. Like, the lawless environment is any street out here, the stop signs and the speed limits and the blinkers, and all the lawlessness is just rampant. That's why we're damaged, because we got picked on for these dumb things. I got a ticket for having a microphone stand that was over 4 feet high. Now that's a cultural issue. On a global scale, people come to Venice Beach. I've had fans from all over the world buy my CD. They see me, oh yeah, get a ticket for having a mic stand over 4 feet because it comes up to my, to my height. And that's dumb. It's just dumb, and it's all over the internet, and you're all associated with every day it goes on. The video from yesterday, they all become evidence in a federal case.
Mr. Wilson, he's not talking about this appointment.
I got a feeling he'll reconnect with it.
Thank you. Okay, well, that's not a bad one. I'm not going to complain. But I said it's delicate because on one hand you got the Oscars and you've got Hollywood and you've got that film culture. And on the other hand, you've got all these things you throw money into, and it's Mexican things, and it's African American things, and I think if you look at the blogs, and if you're really out there in the real world, people all want to be equal. They don't even want all the tags anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to our world.
Thank you.
And maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and Miss Perry is on the queue after you finish. So anyway, please begin.
Ms. Jefferson, I just rise to say what a tremendous appointment this is. You have turned around the programming and the profile and brought new life to the entire campus where the California African American Museum is located. It is a joy to attend, not just for the collection, the permanent collection and the various collections, but the exciting programming that takes place in the open space, the gathering area. It is a center for arts and culture, music, the spoken word, political speeches, everything. It's just a community center now, a gathering center that has garnered national and international acclaim. So to have you on this commission is really quite, we're the ones who are fortunate, and I just hope you have enough patience to be able to be a commissioner in a time where we don't have very much money and still come up with some good ideas. So thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Mr. LaBonge.
I just wanted to rise to support this nominee of the mayor, who has a great feel for the city and a great feel for all people, and I wish you well. I'm voting yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LaBonge. Mr. Garcetti.
Yes, just very briefly as well, I rise in support, and great to see you here, Charmaine. I think that we have a real challenge in the city taking its cultural richness and publicizing it more. And just curious to know what sort of thoughts you can, that you have, and what we can do. For instance, when somebody arrives on a transatlantic or trans-Pacific flight here in Los Angeles, to be able to land and know what's going on at CAM, to know when we have Pacific Standard Time and things like that are going on. What role can we play from the city in terms of making sure this place, which I know is the cultural capital of the world, when we have history being taught, when we have cultural experiences in our neighborhoods that are increasingly being showcased, sometimes I feel like that's disconnected from those people who come to us. So cultural tourism to me has always been a great passion. Do you have any thoughts, being one of the great experts of bringing tourists, looking at culture from your experience at the museum?
I thank you for the question and the support. One, this is my native home, Los Angeles. I was born and raised here. But I will admit to having spent about 20 years outside of Los Angeles, and part of that time included having served as the Deputy and Acting Commissioner of Cultural Affairs for the City of New York. And at the time, we ran into a similar, not only had the budget been cut, but the issue was tourism within our own city. The same things are faced in Washington, D.C., where people have great monuments, great artifacts, and people don't know about them. And one of the things that we started was a New York Is, and literally went and sought some private funding that put up posters in the airports that actually
said New York is dance, New York is music, New York is theater. And the City of Los Angeles has done a great job of installing exhibitions throughout airports. And as I've traveled around the country, when I have seen exhibitions in airports, they really strike my attention. They cause me to want to know more about what's going on in that city. And so I believe that your cultural institutions here in Los Angeles, as well as all of the artists themselves, are a great way to sell our city right when you step off that airplane.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, we met with Bernard Kinsey and his installation there at the museum that you so gratefully put together and have made happen over the years.
Thank you for that
extraordinary. And I know that he was very pleased and everybody's very pleased. For the viewers watching this, tell them a little bit about what you did with that museum and why you feel the Cultural Affairs Commission is something that you can add to, which I'm thrilled you're stepping up to the plate.
Well, I believe I come into this position having functioned in a couple of ways, both as a dancer who was trained in Los Angeles and a UCLA grad. I also danced professionally for 8 years, and so my training and my life as a performer started here. But when I stepped away from doing it, I went into arts administration, and I've had the great fortune of not only working for the federal government, the National Endowment for the Arts, as a senior program specialist, but eventually, after practicing law for a minute and having Arthur Mitchell of Dance Theater of Harlem ask me to come and be the executive director there, to spend time on the ground level with an organization. And I bring all of that back to Los Angeles with a belief that my role as a commissioner is to help to support not only the great culture that comes out of our city, but to recognize that it is our governments, it's the head of the tribe that makes it possible for the story of a people to be told, so that the next generation and the next generation and the next generation know what it is. And so we not only reflect the history through that culture, but we also reflect our creativity, where we're going next, and looking at how we may have made mistakes in the past and how not to repeat them. So I think my role as a commissioner is to support the agency and the efforts and the policies that the City of Los Angeles wants to put forward in recognizing its role as a great cultural center.
Thank you. Joe Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise, Ms. Jefferson, to support this nomination.
Thank you.
Down at San Pedro, we have the historic Warner Grand. And it's important that it's such a limited budget that the Cultural Affairs Department is dealing with. It's important that we have that private-public partnership. And I'd like to see the Warner Grand to move forward with the RFP. I was on the phone earlier with Liz Johnson to discuss her appointment, who she is also supportive of as well. But the performing arts has been in my blood for a lifetime. Between my wife and I, my kids going to a performing arts magnet school. And in the great 15th, we are the cultural gem of the City of Los Angeles. And I just ask that you don't forget about us in the 15th, and between the Warner Grand and the Croatian Cultural Center, we hope that you continue to support us down there. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Well, I thank you very much. And since I live right down the street from the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center, I can assure you that I understand the significance of what such centers, the role that they play in enhancing a community, either bringing it back or keeping it strong. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jefferson.
Okay, there are no more speakers in the queue. Mr. Clerk, let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Congratulations, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Deeply appreciate it.
Mr. Clerk, what is our next order of business?
Mr. President, that brings us to item number 7, called Special for Cards.
Okay, and as I'm calling the cards, if I could ask Mr. Labange to come take the com. Okay, item 7, we have Mr. Zumadog and Arnold Sachs. Arnold, are you on this one, or are you? Okay. Mr. Zumadog.
Yes, let me see, what is this one? Okay, let's see. Yes, all right, this is about planning and land use. I was going to pass on this one, but it is very important for people. It's regarding amending the municipal code, the Mills Act fees for planning, to add an appeal fee. They want to add appeal fees. Now, I like to say I don't think the city should be adding any new fees right now, and the reason why is because they have a problem not being able to determine which department should be applying the fee. For example, in the LA Housing Department, it's recently been brought to my and the FBI's attention that the Building and Safety Department that the LA Housing Department is citing Building and Safety Code. Therefore, the LA Housing Department is assessing fees to the property owners. This is illegal because the courts have ruled that the Building and Safety Department has their own enforcement mechanism in which to enforce code and to apply fees to the property owners, and that LAHD, the Housing Department, may not do that. The result has been that fines have been assessed and properties have been seized. In other words, people have lost their homes and buildings, and then people are forced out onto the streets with nowhere to live as a result of illegal enforcement entirely. So I'm here to say it's complete RICO racketeering, and so I say no on this item because we have the biggest thing going on in the city right now, and I hope the LA Times is watching, and that all the FBI and that every investigative body in America is watching. Barack Obama, you're trying to keep people in homes, but you have the LA Housing Department illegally citing building code, which causes people to get taxed too much, and then they lose their homes entirely, and it's all illegal. It's all illegal. They lost the court in October of 2011. And so the city's in big trouble.
Arnold Sachs, please. Arnold Sachs, thank you very much. Please, let's have the speaker's podium clear. Arnold Sachs.
Thank you. Good morning again, Arnold Sachs. My concerns regarding this relate back to the city's attempt to somewhat balance the budget. I believe last year, when you were facing a deficit, you had several motions made regarding being cost efficient with some of the departments where fees that were being charged would cover the cost of doing the investigation. That being said, I also recall when the trash fees were increased for the... By the way, can you stop this chicken from running back and forth in the middle of the road here?
Please, it's okay. Don't say that, Mr. Sachs.
I'm just saying something. There's a chicken walking back and forth in front of the road here while I'm trying to talk. Please stop the chicken. By the way, why did the chicken cross the road? But the trash fees were increased, and the concept was that was to pay for more police, to bring the police force up to the 1,000 officers that the mayor wanted. And what happened to those trash fees? Well, there were some police that were hired, but a majority of that money went to salaries. So the fact is that fees that are generated can be used for multiple purposes and not allocated for any specific purpose, and there isn't one stated here. So clarify what the fees exactly would be used for, how much is being collected now, what the increase will come to, and what exactly they'll be allocated for. Because otherwise, this is just another attempt to nickel and dime the constituents in the city of LA. You've already done that numerous times, and every time you turn around, you're trying to skin that penny. Get off your duffs.
Thank you very much. No speakers on the queue. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
We have staff here for planning. Let's take 24. There was a public hearing in committee, so we'll note that Linda Dishman, we thank you for all the good work you do with the Conservancy. And Mr. Dog, there's no public comment. We had it in committee. Thank you. Staff, just tell the council what's before us so we can move on.
Council members, this item is a report from the Planning and Land Use Management Committee relative to increasing the city's cap on lost revenue under the Mills Act program. My name is Lambert Giesinger with the Planning Department. Thank you. The city is currently at $900,000 in terms of lost revenue under our $1 million imposed cap. So we're looking ahead to extending the future life of the program relative to increasing that cap from $1 million to $2 million. And we currently have 601 properties in the program, and that is over the last 15 years.
And this is Senator Mills, the great senator
Yes,
from the
from
state,
San Diego.
who did a lot of good for California.
Yep.
Anything, Mr. Bernstein?
I'll just add Ken Bernstein with Office of Historic Resources. I would just add this is really the only financial incentive we have for historic preservation in the city. The 600 properties that we have in the program span all the council districts, all neighborhoods of the city, and this is a small investment in the revitalization of our historic buildings and the spillover effect throughout neighborhoods.
And it's approximately how much dollars?
The lost revenue to the city has been, we're at $900,000. The cap is $1 million, and so the request is to increase that cap to $2 million so that the program can continue.
Very good, and the improvement to the communities are worth millions and millions in property. Mr. Weezer of the 14th, the historic 14th, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I introduced a motion working with the Planning Department to make this possible. It's been 18 years that we've had the original $1 million in there. We're now just coming close to the cap, and if we don't move forward on this and be proactive, we may lose some potentially historic sites or don't provide the incentive to property owners who can preserve their sites. And particularly now it becomes even more important when we're doing the Survey LA, where we're going out throughout the city and identifying potentially historic sites. But what's the use of doing that if we don't help or incentivize those property owners to move forward on this? This is one of the first things or tools that they look at to see if they should or should not preserve their structures. And so this is so important. I want to thank the Planning Department for being proactive in this and not run out of money and then come back in these tight fiscal times think about what we can do. So this is a good thing, and I appreciate all your hard work there. And with Survey LA coming through, I think there's going to be a higher demand for this, and it probably won't be 18 years. It would be the time period there. It would be a lot shorter. I think we're going to run out of that money a lot shorter time. It won't be 18 years the next run, I think. So thank you for this.
Thank you all. Thank you. A good job all the way. And again, Linda Dishman, good job with the Conservancy. There's no speakers on the queue. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
14 ayes. Forthwith on that. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, that brings us to item 21, called Special for Councilmember Garcetti.
21, 22, and 23, please.
21, 22, 23. Very well.
Thank you.
Oh, do we have any card requirements, public requirements on that? We have one card on 21.
I believe there are cards on this matter, sir, on item 21, sir. Public testimony was satisfied in committee.
It was satisfied in committee. We thank the gentleman for coming down. We had our public comment in committee. Now we open up to Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, today we have a collection of three motions that I've brought forward as we still face square on the crisis that has led this country down this economic path with foreclosures. As you know, in 2007, I stood up here with many of you, seeing some storm clouds that were brewing and establishing a hotline to help those folks who are being preyed upon with very exotic products that we saw being quickly destabilizing in our community. We passed laws here that were unfortunately thrown out at the state level, which would have prevented some of these products from going. But the hotline that we set up today, and we were just in South Los Angeles a week ago, with three different homeowners, one who had survived cancer 3 times, one a veteran who had almost lost his home, and a third who was a woman in Mr. Parks' district who had, in Leimert Park, had a divorce and almost lost her home because there's such shame when people go to the banks and actually reach out on foreclosures. To date, we've saved $500 million of homes for people who have reached out to the city hotline that we established and that went nationally. We've saved over 100,000 people from losing their homes. But today, the COA and LAHD report that we have has updated foreclosure statistics, shows that the crisis is still not abated. From January 2007 to September 2011, there were 46,600 602 property foreclosures in the city of LA. In the last quarter of this past year alone, 5,729 homeowners received a notice of default, and thousands more are approaching default or barely making their payments as they live paycheck to paycheck in our city. There is tremendous shame around reaching out and saying, in terms of the home foreclosures, that this has happened. First and foremost, I want to tell people who are underwater, call now. Make sure that you pick up the phone and that you reach out. You can go through Los Angeles Housing Department, through 311, or I'll give you the 800 number in a second, to get somebody who will be your advocate with your bank. And often that switches who has your mortgage so often that you feel powerless. But as a city, we need to find practical, no-nonsense ways to help keep Los Angeles families in their homes. But the banks have to do their part, too, to keep families in their home. We need banks to do the right thing. It's in all of our interests. It often costs a bank more to foreclose, and the negative impact of vacant foreclosed properties on our neighborhoods is devastating. Unfortunately, right now, the system is geared towards foreclosure. In other words, there's so many people who make a little bit of money along the way. It is geared towards getting people profit while tragedy occurs. We need a system geared towards helping people stay in their homes. It's better for families, it's better for our communities, and it's better for banks when a home is lived in, cared for, and paid for. That's why we need to implement a mandatory mortgage mediation program, modeled on a couple programs that I've studied across this country. Almost 50% of foreclosures are considered no contact, meaning that the borrower had no contact with the lender. We need to change that. Mediation programs offer homeowners threatened with foreclosures the opportunity to have a meeting with their lenders, to receive counseling from a trained mediator, and then that mediator can help explain alternatives for all parties to reach a fair, negotiated solution. And they can conclude with a settlement that is attractive to the lender and that keeps the homeowners in their home and keeps our communities stable. We've also heard stories where vulnerable consumers are taking advantage, and that's secondly why we need to improve the disclosures that consumers receive. Reverse mortgages, all of us see these ads now on TV. Celebrities who should know better are telling, especially our seniors, that if they pull a little bit of money out of their homes, they can retire in prosperity, when what they're doing is the opposite, taking away what little these seniors have. We need to do more to ensure that seniors are provided with simple, understandable languages that discloses the true cost of borrowing. This is very similar to the predatory lending that led, among other things, to the crisis that we face today, and it's like we haven't learned anything, and now we're preying on our seniors. The foreclosure crisis is an overwhelming one, but I'm proud to have led LA in helping people fight back, authoring legislation to stop good tenants from being evicted illegally. Mr. Parks and I had press conference in his district and also in my own district when that happened. I just ran into Johnny Lee, Mr. Parks, if you remember, in Echo Park, the guy who we did the press conference with. He came to something the other day. Not only did he not get kicked out of that, he was able to save enough money, and he bought that triplex. He's a homeowner today, thanks to the good work that we were able to do. But we have to, I also authored legislation to crack down on modification scams to take advantage of desperate homeowners, but we must do more. So unfortunately, the foreclosure crisis is not over. Colleagues, I urge you to support these items today to help keep Angelenos in their homes. And the instruction today for the first one is to have the CLA and LHD to continue to monitor foreclosures in the city, monitor the President's foreclosure prevention proposals, and transmit the Council action and report to the California Attorney General as she continues her good work on this. On Action 22, it's to instruct the Housing Department, City Attorney, and CLA to report back on the feasibility of implementing a mediation program. And we've seen this in Springfield, Massachusetts, State of California, Orange County as well. And then on item 23, to instruct LAHD and the City Attorney and our CLA to report back on if the city can do more to improve disclosures for our reverse mortgage financing that is preying on our seniors and so many others. Thank you, colleagues, and I ask for your support.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Garcetti, for your leadership on this. It's so key and it's so important. Mr. Rushmore, would you come up, please? And anybody else from the CLA, a CAO's office, I got a memo this morning that was directed to me, which I want to share with all my colleagues from Jerry Miller's shop regarding Springfield, Massachusetts as well. And quickly, to support where we're going on this, those report backs are key and essential for us as we're doing our homework on this issue. You know, we have an ad hoc committee on social equity, which will be looking at these issues in conjunction with obviously, the other committees in the council. All right, item 21, you heard Mr. Garcetti point out the stats that 46,602 properties have been foreclosed since 2007. Here are my questions to you. I understand that the state has been provided with nearly $2 billion in federal money to help reduce and prevent foreclosures, yet less than $39 million in assistance has been provided. The banks are not engaging nor are they participating in these programs to help homeowners. This money will revert back to the federal government early next year if it is not used. Obviously, this is inexcusable for this money to be just sitting there. The taxpayers bailed out the banks, and it's now their turn to step up to the plate and help the homeowners. What has LAHD's experience in dealing with the banks? Have they expressed any interest in assisting people who are at risk of or have been foreclosed upon?
Thank you for those comments and question, Councilman Rushmore Cervantes, with the Housing Department. The Department, as well as the City, has been struggling with this issue for some time now. We were fortunate on the back end, that is, projects that, or homes that have been foreclosed, we were able to get $144 million for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. But the real issue is on the front end.
Right.
And there's been a number of programs that have been created federally, HAMP, HARP, as well as the hardest hit funds that you mentioned, close to $2 billion that were identified, a very small usage. From that, the department was competitive in securing $5 million for a competitive program, rather innovative program that was similar to HARP, where we would actually drive the mortgages down, so there would be a principal write-down. In addition to that, there was a program that we spearheaded within Council Districts 6 and 7. We were only able to get one bank to participate, and that's Bank of America. We've had an agreement with them for over a year to utilize $1.1 million, and to this date, we still have not had a single property that's been rewritten. So we're not getting the participation from any of the banks. Now, you may have heard that there's the recent settlement of $26 billion that the state will now receive, approximately $18 billion of which 12 of that billion is going to be for principal write-down. So there is some kernel there, but the problem is that's just 5 banks. Further, what the problem is you've got Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac where they do not allow principal write-down. So that represents approximately 6% of the overall mortgages in the state of California. So that's problematic in itself. So this settlement is nice. It's going to offer approximately $2,000 for people that qualify that have already been foreclosed upon. But the lion's share of the problem is getting the banks to participate. The 18 billion is nice, but it's not nearly enough. We need more participation from more banks because right now it's just not enough.
Well, it's disgusting, to be candid with you, and frankly, it's just outrageous that this happens this way. What can we do about it?
Well, I think having communications like this from the council and the mayor to the state attorney general's office, who lobbied strongly to secure as much money for the state of California. It looks like from the $12 billion or $18 billion that we're going to receive, the LA County area is going to receive a little less than $4 billion, but we need to lobby for more. We need to hold the banks accountable. There's that responsible banking ordinance that Councilman Alarcon introduced that drives responsible banking to get more participation from the banks and hold them more accountable. So I think actions by the legislators here in Los Angeles can help drive these banks to hold them more accountable.
Yeah, well, Mr. President, I have more questions. Should I push my button again to go through it for 22 and 23?
Yeah, just push your button again.
Okay, thank you.
Because I have another colleague on the queue. Mr. Alarcon.
Thank you very much. First of all, the foreclosure crisis has obviously been the most troubling aspect of our economy in the last 4 years. So this is something we absolutely are going to. It's going to take longer than 4 years to work out of. We also need to know who are the culprits, who was involved here. In committee, I had requested a list of the banks and how many foreclosures they were responsible for. And we also noted, and I mentioned to council, I believe it was last week, that the city of Berkeley has taken $300 million of deposits from Wells Fargo on the basis simply that they foreclosed on so many people in Berkeley that they did not want to place their deposits in Wells Fargo. It so happens that we place our deposits in Wells Fargo. And it sends a very bad message, I think, to the public that while we are angry and screaming, and we're getting pennies on the dollars for the settlement, we still deposit our money in Wells Fargo. But I'm not picking on Wells Fargo. There were a lot of banks involved in this. It just so happened that they sort of shielded their responsibility by selling off all their subprime loans, and other banks appeared to be, the initiators of these loans, when in fact Wells Fargo initiated these loans, many of which are in Los Angeles. Back to my original question. Have we created a list of the foreclosures and which banks are responsible for how many?
We don't have that list created as of yet, but the one thing you've got to recall also, there are banks, these major banks, that are merely servicers for other banks as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they created the loans, they were purchased. So that's part of the problem that we have, is that the banks that may have title now weren't necessarily the originators of those loans. They're now the servicers, such as Countrywide Mortgage. And there's been a situation with Deutsche Bank that the city filed a lawsuit against, and by and large, they were just servicers.
But that information's out there, so that would be helpful.
We'll create that list.
Well, not only would I like the list of the banks that are foreclosing on people, but also if it originated with another bank that created a subprime lending situation to begin with, I'd like to know. I mean, there should be like an asterisk that this was not the originator of the loan. The originator of the loan was this other bank.
Certainly.
That would be very helpful if we could get those numbers. And finally, with regard to the settlement, you're absolutely right. It addresses 6% of the problem, and it's not going to make us whole by any means. So the city's going to have to suffer through that, and I hope that we work harder to make banks responsible for the devastation that they brought to our community.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Alicant. Obviously, you've been the conscience on this, and you've been fighting pretty hard for it, and I appreciate that leadership. Item 22, I'd like to get some report backs, and Mr. Garcetti, if this works for you as well. I request the LAHD, the CLA, and the city attorney to report back on how effective has the mandatory mediation program been in Springfield, Massachusetts. This is about Springfield, Massachusetts, folks, and I mentioned they did a report for us, and frankly, it came originally from Lila Garrett, an incredible progressive in Mr. Koretz's district, and we took it, and the city is looking at what they're doing in Springfield and how it goes forward. So I'd like to, first of all, circulate what I got here on Springfield, Massachusetts, okay, to everybody, and I want you all to get a chance to look at that. But I do want to report back from those committees I just mentioned, or parts of our city, on the mandatory mediation program in Springfield, Mass. I also want to know what options we have as a city to enact a mediation program. I would like the city has ways of forcing binding mediation between borrowers and lenders. Look into that. I mean, for God's sake, we should be able to do that. If a mediation program is the most effective use of resources to positively reduce the number of foreclosures, I'd like to see that. Is it an opportunity for us to do that? And that is on item 22. I do have comments on item 23, but I'll wait until we discuss that, unless you want me to do that right now.
In fact, you have another minute and a half.
That was all of it? Okay, 23 then goes like this. Got to make sure I get the right paper in front of me on this one. John, where's 23? Okay, here it is. Since 2007, 46,000 properties have been foreclosed on the City of Los Angeles. I request what options does the City of LA have to model a program off of the Springfield Reverse Mortgage Counseling Program? How does that work, and how can we deal with that? Are there any nonprofit organizations in Los Angeles that have the resources, expertise, and willingness to provide reverse mortgage counseling? I have this gentleman that is retired who's going to help, and we're going to get his energy involved. And the last one is, could a mortgage counselor potentially serve in the capacity of a watchdog or advocate for homeowners? And if we can get some of those answers in the report backs, I think we're moving in the direction of dealing with the issue.
We certainly will, Councilman.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I'd like a second on that. Second.
Second by Mr. Zine. Mr. Labange.
Thank you. So it was 47,000 parcels?
That is 47,000 properties
How many
from
were-
January 2007 till September 2011.
And so what year period is that?
Well, it's close to a 5-year period.
5-year period?
Yeah.
Could you go back and see what the 5-year period is before, so you can see the striking contrast? Is that possible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then how many are single-family dwellings, how many of them are condominiums? If you can get that information, I think it would be helpful to know, and then as we pursue this, to look at it. And then also, if it's available, only because we're a city in a county, what is the county-wide number? It's for 47,000 in the city. Do you have an idea what the county-wide number is?
It's hard to distinguish the difference between city and county. That usually comes in blocks within counties.
So it's 47,000 in the county?
I believe that it is. I'll double check.
Excuse me, Councilman, I'm Clay McCarter with the CLA's office. In our report, we discussed the County of Los Angeles foreclosure figures for the fourth quarter of 2011, and the total single family is 5,380, which is 17% of the statewide total.
I got it, but let me ask a question, because we do focus, on our city, and then there's a region of the county and the 87 other cities, and the impact it is. I don't know if the California League of Cities or anyone has this information, or if anybody would like that information, I think it would be helpful if we look as we go forward. So could you look for that if you can?
Certainly.
Find that if it's available without having to dig hard.
Councilman, that number, that 47,000 figure is the city of Los Angeles.
Is the city, so the county is twice that or whatever? Because I know some were very distressed areas. It's good to know, because some of them may be people who work for the city of Los Angeles, who live far from the city, and to have all those numbers are important.
Certainly.
So we can look at it. Thank you.
Mr. Alarcon. Richard.
I'm sorry, I was on the phone. I was
Happens to me all
texting
the
while
time.
driving. I apologize.
Refinancing.
I just wanted to state my request in the form of the motion. I asked for it in committee. When do you think you could get us the list of banks and which foreclosed on who?
Perhaps we can provide that as part of the report back to the other two motions.
So that would be
I'd probably say 30 days.
30 days, okay. So can I get a second on my motion to incorporate into that report the list of which banks were tied to the foreclosures? Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, so it's my understanding, Mr. Rosendahl seconds Mr. Alarcon's motion. That brings us to Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you. To conclude, Mr. President, thank you all colleagues for those additions and looking at the reports as well. As I mentioned before, this hotline that we launched, it's 1-888-388-HOPE. There is no shame in picking up the phone and saving your home. There's only shame in losing it. And life happens, as Mr. Labange says, and I know we have students here, so don't mishear me. Shift happens. In life, things shift. Divorces happen. People get sick. People get laid off. And that's no reason to lose your home. When you call that number, just to give you an idea, in the first 20 days of launching this in 2007, we logged an astounding 12,020 calls. What began as an initiative here for Los Angeles was expanded to provide foreclosure assistance nationwide. The reason I had the idea for this was we looked at what Operation Hope, who was our partner with this, was doing after Katrina. And while that was a natural disaster, we saw a man-made disaster happening here. And I said, could you do the same thing where you're helping people stay in their homes and not lose their homes in New Orleans and throughout the Gulf Coast, and do that here? So what began in Los Angeles has expanded to provide foreclosure assistance nationwide. The second call center has been added to heavy demand. And to date, we've received more than 147,000 calls, both English and Spanish. We have multilingual ability. We average over 500 new cases each month. We've counseled more than 40,000 clients, representing 100,000 people in those homes, and funded more than $450 million in loan modifications. A lot of 5-year adjustable rates will adjust this year, so it's important to learn how to negotiate with your lender, how to apply for loan modifications, how to avoid foreclosure as we look at these steps to make sure that other people don't get into that pit in the future. And thank you, the Housing Department, CLA, and all our partners for looking into this. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. for all your hard work, Councilmember Garcetti. With that said, Mr. Clerk, there are no more speakers on the queue. Can we, or did you want to say something?
Mr. President, for clarification, 21 would be adopted, and 22 and 23 would be adopted as amended according to the Rosendahl and Alarcon friendly amendments.
Okay, fine. Then let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Next. Oh, wait, Mr. Lavange.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If I could, I want to introduce first Howard Gluck, who's a great assistant supervising city attorney for the Carmen-Tantanich in our city attorney's office, but he has a great number of students who are here from Kiel, Germany, who are here through RISE. They're here on a very special program from the university that provides BAs and MA degrees in public administration for students who want to go into public service. And many of them, it's their first trip, and we want to welcome you there. Our sister city is Berlin. We thank you for what you do. You have one student over there who's standing with you. We hope he gets good education as well. 2. Thank you. Welcome these great young people. Thank you very much.
Anyway, welcome to Los Angeles. Mr. Clerk, let's get back to work. Next.
That brings us to item 29, called special for Councilmember Labange.
Mr. Labange.
Yes, if I could have Mark Adams from the airport department here. Mark? Okay, I'll see you back there in a second. Hey, yeah. Mark is coming up from the Department of Airports. As you know, the Traveler's Aid. Excuse me. Mr. Clerk, is this not Traveler's Aid? Oh, thank you very much. I apologize. Mark, sit there anyway, since you're halfway here. President Obama's in town tonight. I understand from local reports. If anybody has a chance to meet him, tell him how important it is for us to encourage international travel to Los Angeles. Late great Mayor Tom Bradley did such a wonderful job of opening the city with the expansion of the Olympic Games, with John Farrar, our late City Council President, did at that period of time welcome people to Los Angeles. With that being said, there's another effort to try to encourage international travel. Mark, give us the rundown on this.
Well, Mark Adams, Los Angeles World Airports, as best I understand, President Obama has an executive order to spur on various elements within the administration to promote travel and tourism, and we're, of course, very excited. I know we're working with the United States Travel Association to try to, implement some of these things, particularly as regards to international facilitation, getting the customs lines moving better at LAX and such like that.
So on this matter, just a reminder, international travel has been so important for all our communities, for all the villages of the region, so that people could enjoy and love Los Angeles. So Mark, thank you for your work. Just give a rundown, approximately how many people fly into LAX?
LAX, we have approximately 30 million passengers arriving each year.
30 million a year?
And about a quarter of those are international.
And a quarter of those are 30 million. So this is a tremendous number. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. We had it in committee. We're working with LA Inc. on promoting international travel as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Garcetti, followed by Mr. Rosendahl.
I'll go to Ms. Rosendahl next. Go ahead.
Mr. Garcetti is deferred to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Thank you.
Yes, Los Angeles International Airport is the #1 destination airport in the world. And that is because we are a megalopolis of 25 million people from Santa Barbara to San Diego, and people come and visit and interact. The issue that I'm thrilled to see that Senator Feinstein has put some leadership on is when we go through the Tom Bradley terminal, there were not enough custom agents in place, and the fact that a person gets off a long flight had to wait more than the 45 minutes, which we figure is the max should be. Good news is she rattled a few cages, and now we have 20 more. Just give us the customs update. That's what I'd like to hear.
Well, we had a struggle this past summer with the customs facilities at LAX, where we had some fairly long lines. the 45-minute standard you referred to was the pre-9/11 standard for the immigration clearance at LAX and all airports. We've been working with Customs locally and in D.C. to try to improve the Customs handling and the Customs staffing and frankly their procedures that they employ at LAX. And I think we've had some good success. We've had great leadership, both not just Senator Feinstein, but Congresswoman Hahn, Congressman Berman have both written letters on our behalf. We're having a good luck trying to improve those processes, and hopefully that'll continue. We've got the support of CBP. They're trying to do better, and hopefully everything will work out better this summer. But the summer tends to be the time when things bottle up.
Yeah, and just for people's awareness, the Tom Bradley Terminal, which is going under a major renovation, we're spending about $1.4 billion, if I'm not mistaken. The plan is to complete it by the spring of 2013. Are we on target?
Yes, at this point for 2013, yes, the Bradley Terminal is on target for that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, and thank you both, Mr. Rosendahl and Mr. Labange, for both of your initiatives. Mr. Rosendahl is on making sure we can get people through customs more quickly, which is such a huge deal at the airport, and Mr. Labange for looking at this. President Obama, when he announced this earlier this past month, the We Can't Wait initiative, we know that here in the United States, 2.7% of our GDP comes from tourism, and I dare say in Los Angeles it's even much higher. Our three main industries are trade, tourism, and technology. That middle one, tourism, is so critical. We love having our visitors that are here today from Germany. Increasingly, we have middle classes in India and China and Brazil that are traveling as well. And the 7.5 million jobs that this represents in America, we have a huge portion of those here. Last year was a record year for tourism in Los Angeles. I think it's because of the work that Ms. Perry has done downtown, the work that we've done in Hollywood, the things that we've been able to do to look at increasing, what people see when they're here, and hopefully having a better visitor experience at the airport than probably you experience when you're here. But we're on the way building out a new airport so that somebody was saying that to us this morning, when you go to Dhaka, Bangladesh, they actually have a better airport than we do here. And congratulations to the Bangladeshi friends that we have. They've done the work that Los Angeles hasn't. So we have a long way to go. But as we look at that specifically, I think we also need to explore down the line with LA Inc. what we can do to have some permanent offices in our major Asian cities and in Latin America, not just for tourism, but for trade and investment as well with some of our other partners. I know they're sometimes expensive to maintain. Sometimes we've just done it on a contractual basis. But you go to those places, I guarantee you've had a Visit Hollywood office someplace in Seoul and a Visit Hollywood office someplace in Shanghai and someplace in New Delhi. With these rules loosening up, it's really an amazing moment for us to capture that tourism that's key to our economy. So good to see the President taking this move with his executive actions on a day that he himself is here as a visitor as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Labange. We did have one card on this item, but I see that Mr. Sachs has left, so it's time to vote. So, Madam Clerk, why don't we open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next item. Mr. Labange, I think this is your three-peat, so you're...
Real quick here, and Mark Adams is here from that. This will be the next item. You want to call it, Mr. Clerk?
That's item number 30, called special for Councilmember Labange.
Thank you very much. Travelers Aid left the airport, left Union Station. We're working with MTA, and I don't know if there's a representative from MTA here right now to get it back. But Mark, give us the report on LAX.
Travelers Aid was under contract to do volunteer coordination at LAX for many, many years. Their contract ran out on at the end of the fiscal year, June of last year. The reason we did not renew the contract with them, we went through a process to renew their contract, and the costs they had been proposing had been escalating year after year after year to the point where it was over $400,000 a year for them to administer the volunteer contract. What we are now doing is we took that work on internally, so we have LAX staff now administering the volunteer program. We have many of the same volunteers. We have, in fact, more volunteers now than Travelers Aid did. Most of the Travelers Aid volunteers have transitioned to our Volunteer Information Professional, or VIP, program. and we still have the volunteer force at LAX. It's just now being administered by the city staff, the LAX staff, rather than the Travelers Aid group.
And volunteers are important. You got a great one. And who's the greatest volunteer out there at the airport? I know you have to pick one. You better make it right, Mark. Ethel Patterson.
Ethel is not a volunteer, but Ethel's actually paid staff for LAX. But
Who's the greatest paid staff? Well, I think is a
Ethel
volunteer.
Patterson is the greatest
All right.
paid staffer at LAX.
She's great. All right, she's a wonderful person, but she's part-time, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, very special. Okay, this is just, we recouped here. We lost Travelers Aid, but the department now is focused on that. We're going to keep a watch on that because we want good greeters to welcome international travelers, to give them guidance, to tell them the best ways to enjoy and love Los Angeles.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
That's our
Larry.
intent.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Yes, again, good morning. I know it's been a $400,000 item. Would you explain that and how, when we absorb this, how it will be more efficient and effective? And of course, Mr. Labange is right, the volunteers are the key element.
Right, I know. Our intent was not to diminish the quality of the volunteer force in any way, but Travelers Aid, over the years, the cost of the contract with them to administer the volunteer program had grown from, a much lower amount to over $400,000 a year. The $400,000 a year was supposed to pay for full-time caseworkers who would help travelers in distress. They had cut back the hours of the full-time caseworkers, so there was, I believe, less than one full-time caseworker at LAX. And so we were seeing less and less return for our money. And so what we've done now, I think it's one or two staff members are doing the work that the Travelers Aid was doing in the past. And we're getting the same value, I think. And in fact, we now have over 300 volunteers working at LAX, where Travelers Aid, I think, had 160.
Great.
And like I said, more than half of the Travelers Aid volunteers have transitioned to our force. The same people, yeah. They're just wearing a different colored vest, basically.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. The cost of $400,000 was obviously excessive, so that was the right move to cut that. The need, how often are they utilized, the Travelers Aid? Did we ever do an analysis to find out how many folks versus, what terminal, the language abilities, et cetera, what type of use we receive, and then the hours of operation?
Right. Travelers Aid was in place in our, at the arrivals level for the I had that here somewhere. The Travelers Aid was in place at the arrivals level, and they would service. They would talk to several hundred thousand people a year, and our people are talking to approximately the same number of people. We have three groups basically who to basically provide customer service at LAX. We have what we call our CSRs, customer service representatives, who handle incoming international flights, and they are multilingual, and they are dispatched to meet the flight with the appropriate language, and they are paid LAX staff under the airport guide classification. We also have our VIP group that I described, the volunteers, who sit at booths in the baggage claim area and sort of doing the same function that the Travelers Aid people did, and basically handing out information to people in the baggage claim area. And so we have both groups working and providing those services.
How do they identify themselves? Do they have
They're in a uniform that basically identifies them as I think it should be pretty evident to somebody who's arriving that they're staffers in the airport.
Are they at all terminals or just certain terminals?
They're at all the terminals, yes.
All terminals.
Well, the CSRs are at the international terminals because they're, for the most part, handling the international arrivals. But to the extent that but the VIPs, the volunteers, they're at every terminal.
And what do we do to accommodate our military personnel that are coming in from various parts of the world?
Well, we have our USO, the Bob Hope.
Well, they have the center there, but is there a way to direct them to?
The Travelers Aid and the CSRs can direct people to the USO.
I was just talking about strictly the military folks that return for their limited time here in Los Angeles, to direct them that we do have a USO facility, the Bob Hope USO facility.
Our VIPs and such would direct them to the USO if they want those services, or provide them any services that.
Because when you come to an airport from another part of the world or another part of the country, sometimes you get lost. You go to Atlanta, Hartsfield, it's a huge operation, and to have the assistance of people that are guiding you through that maze. The other question I have, and the final question, is the hours of operation. What are the hours of operation where we have the folks helping the people out?
They're there whenever the flights are coming in, basically. Depending on the terminal, the hours of operation will be different. Depending on the day of the week, the hours will be different. We basically make sure that the terminals are staffed with the necessary information staff when the flights are arriving.
And they work in coordination with the police, the LAX police?
Sure, yeah. I mean,
are they trained to?
I think now that we've taken the job internally, I think our coordination is probably better than when it was Traveler's Aid separate then.
Right. So they're not trying to bring back Traveler's Aid. We're going to go on a new trend.
No, we've like I said, put the administration of the volunteer program internal now, and I think that's from a cost effectiveness standpoint and a coordination standpoint probably better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Okay, let's vote on this item. If the clerk would please open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
All right. Mr. Labange, don't go anywhere. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
In working with Mr. Garcetti, we worked with the Department of Transportation to solve what is a situation that of old engineering from another problem was adjusted on a street called Yucca. This will make it passable for cyclists to ride through an area similar to...
Let's let the clerk read the item. Alan?
Yeah.
What is it, item 32 now?
Mr. President, yes, we have item 32. It's a Transportation Committee report relative to closing Yucca Street through vehicular traffic at Las Palmas, Cherokee, and Whitney Avenues.
Okay, now, Mr. Labange.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was trying to ride my bike fast through that. This particular area does have blockades that are there that are worn and out of use. This new concept, Mr. Garcetti and I strongly support. So the Department of Transportation has made it possible with the Bureau of Engineering to be able to alter that and ride through. It's a good thing for all who ride bikes in Hollywood area along Yucca Street corridor. And I want to thank Mr. Garcetti for his great help and leadership on this.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you. Very briefly as well, thank you, Mr. Labange. Proud to partner with you on this. Yucca used to be synonymous with being an open-air drug bazaar about 15 years ago. And part of the reason these bollards were put up there by the community is because they wanted to not see people cruising through their neighborhoods looking for a place to buy illegal drugs, and that brought down not only the property values but increased the crime rate. Today it's night and day. Yucca is a thriving area. We have a brand new park that's there, Hollywood Boulevard, where there were shuttered storefronts. We've seen a 66% reduction in violent crime, which is an incredible statistic, and thanks to the work of the community and the city in focusing on this. So then we add to that Hollywood has become a center for bicycling, not just in the city but in the world. Out of East Hollywood and the bicycle district, as we call it, now here in Hollywood, it will be a great way for people to avoid the traffic of Sunset and Hollywood, even the increasing car traffic on places like Fountain, and to have a safe place to be able to go and to be able to bike right through the main part of Hollywood. So if you come to Hollywood, bring your bike on the red line and get to where you need to go along Yucca, and we look forward to seeing you in the new reborn Hollywood.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Let's, on this item, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Next item.
Mr. President, that brings us to item 39, called Special for Cards.
All righty. Mr. Sachs, who I think I saw leave, Mr. Herman, Mr. Matt Dowd, and Mr. Zuma Dog, if you guys could please okay, Mr. Dog passes, Mr. Herman, and then Matt Dowd. No, Mr. Herman, you're first. Mr. Herman, you're first.
Citizens of Los Angeles, everyone in council, communication from the city attorney on an ordinance. We've heard all morning about ordinances that were not being enforced correctly with housing, with other areas within the city, which I won't go into. But I'm here to say, on item number 32 that I was passed up on, Mr. Garcetti, excellent job on that. And Mr. Labange, thank you. Making our safe streets for us to ride our bikes and use access on? I'm a
Mr.
strong
President,
believer
he
in
is not
access.
talking about item number 39.
Well, let's see, he'll get back. I trust Mr. Herman. Go on, Mr. Herman.
So in this area here, what I want to know, or what the public would like to know, what is the clarification in this? What is the communication that you're trying to draw out on this? Because I know not many of us understand the language of how this law is interpreted or the ordinance here. Can the city attorney advise the public more on how we can address this? That's all. Thank you. Simple.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. Mr. Dowd, Matt Dowd.
Yeah, I think you'll find it's just Matt now on the card. If you can just read the name, that's the Brown Act. The attorney told everyone that. Just read the name on the card. Now I'm Matt. I'm just going down to one name. Like, sure.
Oh, yeah, was okay, I got you. My bad. Go right ahead.
You know, like Brittany. Or just Paris.
Okay, now let's get on the subject. You were right, I was wrong, but
Okay,
now
and that's another
let's
good
focus.
point. See, these are things where we're going to make technical corrections and we're repairing things in the code, which is what we're about, too. That's why this is a relative item to me. More things we're finding that need to be repaired, and here's one of them. You got a speaker, he announces he's going to go off topic, and then he congratulates everybody, but because it's congratulations, oh gee, let's not say anything, Eric Garcetti wouldn't like that at all. Anyway, so that's what we're doing here. I just want 1 minute on this too. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's all good.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Okay, there are no speakers in the queue. We can prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, that brings us where?
Mr. President, that leaves items 43 and 44. They are both items that are scheduled for closed session. 43 has come from the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, and 44 from Budget and Finance.
Okay, we do have cards on 43. We have Arnold Sachs, we have Matt, and we have Zuma Dog. So we'll take your comment and then we'll go into closed session.
Yes, thank you. My name is Zuma Dog, blogging at zumadog.com, and I'd like to cover this issue on two fronts. It's outside counsel. Okay, it says right here to confer with its outside counsel, legal counsel, over a settlement. So the first thing I need to advise this city council, it's been brought to my attention that City Attorney Carmen Tutanich is now running for district attorney, and that there's an outside counsel firm called Myers Naves.
Mr. President, that's
you
nowhere
don't know
near this item.
Okay, well, I'm going to give Mr. Dog, I'm going to give you a one sentence to get back on this actual topic.
Oh my gosh, and that is not the sentence. But let me just say, you better be careful if you're paying outside counsel for this thing to drag out a settlement because Myers Naves is giving money to Carmen Tutanich.
All right, that's off subject, Mr. Dog. It is. You are disrupting. You're disrupting. All right, cut his mic. Cut his microphone. Why don't we help him find the way out? Okay, let's move on. Mr. Sachs isn't here. The next speaker is Matt.
For the record, Mr. Dog was still yelling for the last few seconds.
I didn't hear you, Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Dog was yelling as he was walking out, and the council was at a standstill.
Well, I'm going to afford him the opportunity to speak. Just know that you're forewarned to stay on the subject matter. Go right ahead, Matt.
All right. Yes, thank you, Matt Dowd. It's always good to get to comment without interference. This one, yeah, look, see, the case alleges the city failed to carry out obligations under the city's general plan framework element, seeks a writ of mandate and declaratory and injunctive relief, just like us. And we already got the injunctive relief. So it does happen. And we didn't have attorneys. We didn't even have attorneys to get the preliminary injunction. So, I'd have to research the case, but clearly these are identical things to what we encountered, where the city failed to carry out obligations.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. Oh, okay, now that was, I have a card on item 44, Mr. Clerk, from Matt. If we could have him come forward. 1 minute left, I've been informed, Matt.
All right, it's good time management. I've got to say, I made it all the way to the end. Didn't get kicked out yet. But like I said, you always can at the end, the city attorney said. So you always got to wait for that. Jose Huizar knows what I'm talking about. It could happen. Okay, well, this is the lead case of 13 consolidated lawsuits about the construction of the Moore Park Street Bridge. And that's what I'm afraid of. The city's getting bogged down in litigation, and there's no money or resources left to tackle the criminal element in the city. And, I'm talking about actual criminals. So, if you want to get testimony from any of these people outside on the street, any of my activity, I'm clean. So, wasting a lot of money, this litigation, and this is one of them. Thank you, Dion O'Connell, City Attorney.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, Sergeants, if we can clear the chambers. Mr. Krikorian.
Yeah. Item number 44 was heard in Budget and Finance. Our recommendation was to simply approve the recommendation of the City Attorney, and we can proceed with that now unless any of my colleagues have questions or concerns.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. So now we have item 44 is before us. If we can open the roll. Well, Mr. Clerk, we have to read it.
Very good, sir. In regards to item 44, there is a recommendation for settlement in the case entitled Gregory Family Trust versus City of Los Angeles, and that recommendation is to execute settlement agreements and all other documents necessary to implement settlement with MCM Construction Incorporated and Post Buckley, Shoe, and Jernigan, with the city neither paying nor receiving any money.
Thank you, Mr.
Clarify,
Yes,
as
Mr.
part of the
City
settlement,
Attorney.
the city is waiving its claim for $148,752.50.
All right, let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Okay, thank you. That still leaves us with item 43. Sergeants, if we could please clear the chambers. I want to thank all of our guests for coming today. But if we could remove everyone so that we can deal with the final item on today's agenda. Are we, Sergeant? Okay, all righty then, we're good. All right, Mr. Clerk, that takes us where?
Mr. President, Council has motions for posting and referral.
Okay, consider those motions posted and referred. Next, are there any excuses or?
Let me check for you, sir. Yes, sir, we do. We have Councilmember Garcetti is requesting to leave at 1 p.m. on Friday, the 17th of February for city business.
Okay, go on.
And Councilmember Cardenas is requesting to be excused on Tuesday, February 28th for city business.
All right, without objection, except for Mr. Garcetti, bring a note so that I can verify your reason for not for leaving at 1. So, no, without objection.
Mr. President, the desk is clear.
All right. Members, any announcements? Mr. Rosendahl.
Yeah, just a quick announcement. The President, as you know, is coming to Los Angeles this afternoon. He does have an event in Homely Hills. I've been in contact even this morning with the White House, the Secret Service, our own LAPD, and everything looks good from the transportation standpoint. There will be some congestion on the west side, but it will be minimal, and the closures will be soft closures. When the President moves through, it'll open up. And I'm expecting it not to be a serious traffic jam, but do avoid, if you can, some of the west side areas there, especially around Homely Hills, but it'll only be for a short moment, and we wish the President a safe trip here and a wonderful experience back in Los Angeles. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Buscaino. Oh, all right, so Mr. Labange? I can't hear Mr. Labange. Yes.
The International Olympic Committee will be hosting a conference at L.A. At the Marriott downtown, where from around the world representatives to discuss issues on women in sports. Very important. Our very own Anita Defense, who's a member of IOC, will be there leading the way. So we wish them well. As an Olympic city with great legacy, we welcome the world again to Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Members, and if all could rise for adjourning motions. Any adjourning motions? Mr. Labange.
Members, I ask for your adjourned in memory of Mary Reinberg Burkhardt, who was a great mom to a number of children, who also served in the past in the Air Patrol for the United States, predates the Air Force during World War II. She was much loved by her family. Her daughter is Susan Mullins, who's a longtime member of the Nichols Canyon Residents Association. I ask we introduce that we do adjourn in memory of Mary Reinberg Burkhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Any other adjourning motions? Seeing none, no more business before this body. This meeting is adjourned.
LA City View Channel 35. Your city, your channel.